this YouTube time together. I know that our local congregation here in Stuttgart is joined by many others around the world. I know people in Portland, in Wisconsin, in Boston also watch this YouTube. And so it's great to see all of you via YouTube today. You see me, I don't see you, but we're all together. We are joined together in these days like never before. And may the Lord draw us nearer to himself as well. We are still in the time of Easter, the second Sunday of Easter. Part of the Easter story, if you remember, contains the words that were spoken to the women who came to the tomb. The angel said, "Now go and tell his disciples, including Peter, that Jesus is going ahead of you to Galilee. You will see him there just as he told you before he died." And so the disciples go to Galilee. But to say that they were full of confidence and Easter joy would be an overstatement. The disciples were still on the gloomy side of life. The story in John 21, verses 1 through 17, is an interesting one and reveals just how they were now feeling. Actually, they did not know what to do with themselves. They were in sort of a limbo, if you will. Before the events of that first Holy Week, they knew who they were. They were the disciples of Jesus, the teacher, the rabbi. They had traveled 3 years with Jesus, watched him in action, and were going to build some sort of community around him. That was the feel that they had. Jesus on the top, and then the disciples with different positions of authority. Somehow. But there was no exact plan. But remember, even the mother of James and John came to Jesus and said, "When you set up your kingdom, Jesus, let my 2 sons reign with you." How about that? And then came that horrible weekend. Jesus was executed by the Romans, and the perspective of a King Jesus with all of the disciples ruling with him evaporated. Even the news that Jesus had risen from this dead position seemed a bit surrealistic. They were afraid. They hid themselves behind closed doors. Jesus had come near to them, but then he had disappeared again. So everything seemed a bit strange and up in the air. So they were still gloomy and totally uncertain. Now in our story, we find them hanging around the Sea of Galilee, waiting. But waiting for what? They were feeling still aimless. And Peter, impulsive Peter, got tired of all of this and suddenly says, "I'm going fishing." He knew how to do that. He felt confident. And the others say, "Okay, let's go fishing." And so they did. They got everything ready. I don't know where they got the boats. Maybe they borrowed them from somebody on the shore there who wasn't using them. But they all got into the boat and they fished all night long. At first, it must have felt like the old times, the pre-Jesus times, when they were out in their boats and fishing and everything just seemed like normal. But the old success of the fish stories of the past is not repeated now. They have 0 fish. And their mood of gloom intensifies. Peter couldn't even catch fish anymore. Now, I don't know about you, but I wonder if Peter thought, "I failed as a disciple, and now I'm failing as a fisherman. Am I able to do anything? How is my life going to go on now?" Peter is the leader, and here he is failing again. Since the tears he shed after the denial of Jesus, he just hasn't been himself. He not only failed Jesus, he also disappointed himself, of course. He had spoken such big words, "I won't let you down, Jesus," not me, but he caved in precisely when he had to take a firm stand. Now what should I do? Peter thought. I suspect that many of us can identify with Peter. Personal failure never feels good. And it is double difficult when you also let other people down. How do you get out of this gloomy mood, this down feeling, this sense of personally failing? Peter didn't have a clue how to do that. In the midst of this gloomy time, a voice from the shore calls out, "Have you caught any fish?" And of course, all of them shout back, "No." Then the man says on the shore, and they cannot recognize him, "Well, throw your net on the right-hand side of the boat and you'll get some." And so the disciples were too tired to think about it. They just did it. They threw the net over the right side of the boat. And surprise, the nets were suddenly so full of fish, they couldn't even pull the nets properly into the boat. John says to Peter, "It's Jesus." And when Peter heard that, he wraps a cloak around himself, jumps into the water, and he wants to get to shore first before any of the other disciples arrive. And what did the disciples find when they got to shore? Breakfast was waiting for them. After a cold night with no fish, here was a charcoal fire with fish cooking and bread waiting to be broken. Jesus asks for some of their fish, and Peter goes to the boat to get some. And then Jesus says these inviting words to all of them, "Now come and have some breakfast." Jesus knew what these disciples needed. They needed a meal to help them physically and emotionally to get some stability in themselves. And then after this breakfast meal, Jesus starts to talk with Peter. We remember, of course, that Peter denied Jesus 3 times. And then he wept bitter, bitter tears over this. Perhaps even while they were eating the fish, I wonder if Peter didn't glance at Jesus and his eyes still brimmed up with tears. He could not shake off this deep, gloomy sadness over his failure, over letting Jesus down, of not being a very good friend. What could help him out of this state of heart and mind? Well, one of the things is direct contact with Jesus. Peter needed to sit with Jesus for a while and eat a meal with him like they had often done in the past. There is something about eating a meal together that helps unwind the soul. But there's more here in the story. Not only a direct meeting with Jesus, direct contact with him, but there's a direct confrontation as well. Peter is confronted by Jesus with his own lack of love. 3 times in our story, Jesus asks Peter, "Do you love me?" That must have been sheer agony for Peter, with each question making each denial so real. Peter could feel the failure each time he was confronted with the question, "Do you love me?" But with each time, each confrontation, his heart began to heal, and he could enter a new frame where something new could be taken into his life. It's with all of us if we try to deny our failures, even deny our sins, deny what we have done wrong, try to push it away. We don't have any space in our souls for anything new. Jesus knew that Peter had to be confronted precisely with that failure in order to be ready to get something new from Jesus. At first, Peter maybe didn't hear it, but with each confrontational question, "Do you love me?" there was a direct assurance from Jesus that there was a future for him. Jesus said to him, "Feed my lambs. Take care of my sheep. Feed my sheep." If you love me, Peter, then here's the next step. I want you to get on with what I've called you to do. There is something new for you to do. Tears are wiped away at this breakfast meal, and Peter's heart is healed enough that he can go forward, that he has a life before him, a life to invest for others. Feed and care for the flock, my flock, Peter. That's the calling I'm giving to you. I heard the theologian N.T. Wright describing all Christians after Easter as Jesus Easter people. I thought that was rather cool. Jesus Easter people. The ongoing discovery of Easter is living out that description. What does it mean to be a Jesus Easter person and Easter people in real time and space? Becoming these people is discovering in Jesus, just as Peter did, that there is a future and a hope, no matter how much we have messed up or failed or ran away or denied or can't even catch fish anymore. That discovery unfolds as Jesus invites us to be at the table with him. As Christians, we often celebrate communion with the bread and the cup, the table to where we are invited by our Lord. As he prepares the meal for us every time, he sets the agenda also for our conversation with him. He draws us into recognizing and confronting our own deepest needs, and usually our deepest need is a lack of love, especially a lack of the kind of love Jesus has in himself for us. The question in a story like this is, what are your deepest needs? What are the hungers of your heart? Where do you lack love? Where do you need something fresh and new from the Lord? And then Jesus says to us, just like he said to Peter, get going again. You are now one of my Jesus Easter people in this world. Feed others. Give out to the world what you have just received from me. Right now in our crisis time, and we almost get tired of talking about this crisis, but it's there and it will be with us for a while. This time out from the regular life we've all lived before is perhaps just now the right time to have this encounter with Jesus yourself. Maybe you have heard the stories over and over again, but now's the time to personalize your relationship with Jesus. An Old Testament text shares a beautiful scene with all of God's people back then. The people of Israel had always gone through different tough times. And even as Jesus Easter people, we go through tough times. We are going through a tough time now. But hear these powerful words in Isaiah 25 and bring it into connection with the story that we just heard by the Sea of Galilee. And here's what is said. In Jerusalem, the Lord will spread a wonderful feast for all the people of the world. It will be a delicious banquet. There he will remove the cloud of gloom, the shadow of death that hangs over the earth. He will swallow up death forever, and the sovereign Lord will wipe away all tears. Could there be a better picture than this for us today? We can see the cloud of gloom, I would say, everywhere. The shadow of death is literally hanging over the earth. But then there are these words of hope. He will swallow up death forever, and all tears will be wiped away. A meal. The gloom is removed. Tears are wiped away, and hope is restored. A shared meal tends to bring hope and restore us again, taking gloom away. I heard an interesting story about Jose Andre. He is an immigrant from Spain who is now living in America. He's a celebrity chef, and he's well known as a celebrity chef, but he's also known for something more. His world central kitchen. Prior to this COVID-19 crisis, Jose found himself going to all the places around the world where people experienced real need. He went to earthquake survivors. He went to people who had gone through the hurricane and were now hungry. And he even more recently went to the cruise ship Grand Princess. And now he goes to people everywhere who are suffering. Jose arrives with all the people he's organized. And what does he bring with him? Food. In the midst of tough times, eating good food restores people's hope. If I'm fed, I can live. What a marvelous thing, a world central kitchen. I liked what Jose said when he said, we need to make sure we are building walls that are shorter and tables that are longer. Whether Jose is fully aware of it or not, I actually thought he is living out what a Jesus Easter person lives out. He's lengthening the tables. My mom often did this back home in Minnesota when we'd have company. Getting ready for more people to come to the table, she would say, let's go get the leaves and put them in the table and make the table longer for the guests. Our talk as Jesus Easter people is to take down the walls, that's our task, that keep people from getting to the table. A table that is lengthened each time someone new arrives who is hungry. Bring that actual sense of hunger that Jose takes care of, and bring that to the hunger of our souls that Jesus takes care of. Jesus told Peter, feed my sheep. And certainly he meant that Peter should take the good news of the gospel with the bread and the wine to people who had never heard about Jesus. That was the new meal, the festive meal for all. But I'm sure also there was common bread that had to be taken as well to people around the world. And that's maybe our challenge tonight, as well as our calling. Getting a table big enough for the world to hear about Jesus, and also for the practical help everyone needs right now, even just to get a good meal. I was seeing all kinds of places where restaurants that are now closed or pizza places that are now closed are making meals for those who are working in the hospitals. Bringing a pizza to somebody locked in the hospital working with COVID-19 patients brings hope. Do you see what I'm saying here? The food brings hope to the world. The bread of Jesus come down from heaven brings hope to the world. Our task as Jesus Easter people is to lengthen the tables and spread the feast and invite everyone to come, taste, and see that the Lord is good. When we pass out this bread and give out this hope, one thing I can tell you will happen: our gloom and our tears will disappear. In this week after the second Sunday of Easter, may you become this kind of Jesus Easter people. Go out and feed the world with the good news, and at the same time you might be able to give somebody something else to eat. May the Lord help us all and give us all the strength that we need to be the people Jesus has called us to be. And all the people said, Amen.